Welcome to Excruciating Minutiae. This is the second episode of our podcast, which obsesses about sports, pop culture, politics, and other unimportant things, but mostly sports. I'm Steven. I'm your host today. Randy will be joining us in a second. This piece that we're going to be doing for you was actually part of our first podcast, and we ran a little long, so we decided to split it up into two. So without much ado, here you go.
Before we wrap it up, we will do a little pop culture stuff because we're not all about sports here. And an interesting factoid that I knew, didn't realize exactly how well it was doing. But we're both movie fans, and for anyone that knows me knows I'm a huge comic book fan. And the number one movie in the world, or at least not the world, in the U.S. I'm sorry, and moving up in the worldwide gross is. You knew it, though I think even you were surprised by it. That's Aquaman as the number one movie, and this is headed for a third weekend in a row. It is already made $846 million worldwide. It's not really facing much at the box office this week. You have other movies that are probably going to be in the top 5 for grosses. Mary Poppins Returns, which I know you were first in line to see when that came out. I'm sure.
It was not.
Did you wait outside?
That was not the movie that was not one of the movies that me and my wife went and saw while I was on vacation from work for a couple.
That was
weeks.
not on the list.
No,
of the movie.
No.
Well, that's a second week movie. So it's Aquaman beat it last week. It's likely going to beat it again this week. Another comic book movie, but an animated one, was the Sony Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, which has done pretty well. Bumblebee, which is the I guess, is that a Transformer spinoff?
Yes,
I guess.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I could never watch the Transformer movies because I just can't take Michael Bay explosions over and over for 2 hours.
I always have an issue with movies that are made with toys. It's just there's just something I just can't get into it. I mean, Toy Story was different, but
I was going to say Toy Story was a movie literally based around toys, but that's different. That's Pixar, and that's
it was, but it actually had a good storyline and such. But
Transformers reminds me. I'm sorry, Transformers reminds me of like the board game movies that were coming out, like Battleship. Remember that disaster?
Yeah.
That's which it pretty much it's the same type of big budget. Let's blow a lot of stuff up. Is there a plot? Can anyone act in this? Probably not. And I was never, even as a big comic book guy, I was never a big Transformers guy growing up. I didn't watch the cartoon. I didn't have the toys. So I was never emotionally invested in Transformers. But basically, it's a box office where there's not really any competition at the moment. So Aquaman is likely going to be on top for a third week in a row. And
yeah, you know what it was? Me and my wife were talking about this, that a lot of the Christmas time is usually a time when a lot of good movies come out, and we always make it a habit to go and see a bunch of them. And we went and saw Vice, which was really good. We went and saw The Mule, which was completely overhyped. Oh my God. It was infuriating. It's one of those movies you need to watch it just so I want you to see what I saw, hopefully, which was that it felt like everyone just mailed it in. It could have been so much better of a movie, and it was slow. It just didn't develop. It was, I feel like Clint Eastwood gets a free pass on this because he's Clint Eastwood. There was Welcome to Marwen, was a big budget, movie that everyone was talking about and got terrible reviews. But
did you see Holmes and Watson?
I did not.
I saw
it's
cratered.
Well, did you see its Rotten Tomatoes score?
I can't imagine it's very good.
It is a Blutarsky-esque 0.0. And it's like,
That deserves some sad trombone there, doesn't it? I think
there we go. Actually, this is actually what it did.
did it bomb? I think that's the
that's what it did. Because let's be,
yeah.
I mean, the two of them had really good success in some movies.
Ricky Bobby.
Step Brothers.
Bobby,
Step
right?
Brothers. People loved it or hated it, but there was, but I have not heard anything good about Holmes and Watson.
I didn't either, and I like Will Ferrell. I he's one of those guys. It's pretty much if Will Ferrell's in it, it's going to be funny, and if Will Ferrell's doing a comedy and it's not funny, then there's a big problem there. And you're right, I haven't heard anything good about it. So you're saying Aquaman kind of ended up like here because we really don't have any big Christmas movies that are really can even give it competition at this point. Is that what we're
right now? I mean, its biggest competition right now might be Bird Box. I mean, which everyone's talking about, which is on Netflix. But it's they
that's Sandra Bullock, right?
Yeah, they claim that 45 million views of that movie happened in the last like 2 weeks. That's incredibly high.
That's a phenomenon.
It is. I don't think anyone thinks it's that good. I think it's just the fact that they're intrigued by the concept of it. It didn't get great reviews. It was kind of mixed. But I'm looking at the movies that are out now, like all of them, and they're just not particularly good.
Well, neither one of us has seen Aquaman.
That's correct.
And like I said, my perspective on it is, and we talked about this before the podcast started a little bit. It's Aquaman, and I told you my memory of Aquaman are two things. It's the Super Friends cartoon where Aquaman just comes across as incredibly lame compared to even the other Super Friends, which I grew up watching as a kid. And it's like, well, there's Superman and Batman and Robin and Wonder Woman. Oh yeah, and Aquaman's here too. And then there's the Cartoon Network Adult Swim type of commercial where I told you it's Wonder Woman and Aquaman tied up by the Legion of Doom, and the Powerpuff Girls rescue them. And right before that happens, Wonder Woman and Aquaman are tied up, and Aquaman says something like, my ability to talk to fish is useless. And Wonder Woman gives him a look like, you're completely freaking useless. You're Aquaman, of course. And that's, from a comic book perspective, Aquaman has never been a A-list property in the DC universe from a comic standpoint. Now, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman have all carried their own comic book titles that have been published literally since the 1930s and 1940s, continuously till today. Aquaman is somebody who couldn't keep his own book. And every time they would launch an Aquaman title, it would make so many issues before it got canceled because no one cared. And attempts were made to give him an edge. There was a storyline where somebody cut his piranha, ate his hand off, and he got a hook. Then he grew a beard, kind of like the actor playing him has kind of that look, a little bit of that edgier Aquaman look mixed in with some of the classic look to the character. But they tried to edge him up, and that didn't work because no one cared because he was Aquaman. And yet, if you had told me 5 years ago that a movie starring Aquaman would be the #1 movie in the country for 3 weeks in a row and would be approaching $1 billion worldwide, even as a comic book fan, I would have said you were crazy. I would have taken that bet in a heartbeat, and I'd be wrong and be paying it off. So it's a long movie. It's got an over 2-hour runtime, and that sometimes doesn't lead to the best box office numbers because fewer showings, and sometimes people don't want to sit through that long of a movie. I'm not really sure what happened here. It's gotten great reviews. I believe. You were talking
It
Rotten
has.
Tomatoes. What's its
Yeah,
Rotten Tomatoes?
Rotten Tomatoes scores 63. It's not horrific. It's not, but it's above average.
It's better. It's a lot better than Batman versus Superman. I'm having, if I had to
Yeah,
guess, and it's a
yeah,
lot better than Justice League, which goes into the, the one of the biggest phenomenons, obviously, in over the last whatever number of years in movie making. Comic book movies really took its place as a legitimate genre that had a lot of potential for storytelling, for good tales, for good movies. The Marvel Cinematic Universe obviously it's been dominating the box office now for a number of years.
yeah. But
Warner Brothers late to the party.
yep.
Kind of I thought rushed the way they did things. They went from, well, they had the Nolan movies, the Batman movies, which were incredibly successful and incredibly well done. And then at this point, Marvel was getting their cinematic universe moving, and Warner Brothers saw that potential. But they did Man of Steel, which was produced by Christopher Nolan, but was not directed by him. And Nolan really, it was producer in name only. He really didn't have much to do with that. That was Zack Snyder, if I'm remembering correctly, who did Man of Steel. And I like some of Snyder's work. I thought he did, I love 300. I thought that was a very well done movie and enjoyed it. Watchmen, he did, which was based on a comic book property that for many years people thought was unfilmable. He did a very good job adapting that source material. And I think Watchmen gets a bad rap as far as movies go, because I actually think it's a good movie and a very faithful comic book adaptation. But Zack Snyder kind of, he has his thing, and it didn't work for Man of Steel for me. And it definitely didn't work for Batman versus Superman, which also had Joss Whedon, who worked on the Avengers, involved in Justice League. And Snyder did Justice League partly, and then had to leave the production. If I'm remembering correctly, he had family issues and I think illnesses and just some bad personal stuff going on. So Whedon was brought on to kind of finish the movie and kind of lighten it up a little bit. So Justice League was kind of a disjointed movie. Batman versus Superman was very disjointed. But they it's like Warner Brothers screwed those properties up. But I loved Wonder Woman, which was, I thought, just a tremendous film and was very successful. If you look at the actual rankings of what they would consider the DC extended universe movies, Wonder Woman currently has the largest domestic gross out of any of the movies they've released. It outgrossed Batman versus Superman. It outgrossed Justice League, which was a colossal disaster. Now, Batman versus Superman was bigger worldwide, but Aquaman is going to pass that. So we're going to be living in a world where an Aquaman movie is going to be the number one worldwide DC movie. And this is a studio that owns, or at least a DC, let me rephrase that, DC extended universe movie. And we're talking about movies that had Batman and Superman in it. And yet Aquaman is leading the way. And I'm not really sure what to make out of that.
In a world where Aquaman rules the box office. I mean, it sounds like a movie trailer.
It does. I don't know how Warner Brothers is going to go forward with this, because they
probably unevenly, like all their properties. I mean, it's you'll get some good ones and you'll get some bad ones.
Well, Henry Cavill. Am I pronouncing his name incorrectly or correctly that first time?
One or the other.
It's one or the other. Who played Superman, and I thought, and because you did see Man of Steel, you did see Batman versus Superman.
I did not see Batman versus Superman. I heard it was so bad that it was not worth me watching.
I can tell you, and again, I have the comic book perspective. The problem that they've had with this is that, well, I'll tell you the Batman versus Superman problem. Since you didn't see the movie, I'll sum it up for you in a couple things. One, the whole Batman and Superman dynamic is that Superman is literally a Boy Scout. He is a He is the beacon of hope. He is the optimist. He is the shining bright light. You did see the Christopher Reeve Superman movie,
Yeah,
obviously, because
all of them.
everybody has
Yes.
seen that. And while the first Superman movie was almost a little campy, and Christopher Reeve's portrayal of Superman comes across so goody two shoes, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that really embodied the spirit of the character. Christopher Reeve really nailed that, belief in the human condition, and justice and truth, and the American way, and the whole, doing things the right way. And it just, he really nailed that role, which is why it defined him as an actor. When they did Man of Steel, that was not the Superman we saw on screen. Was too dark and too edgy. And the problem was the suits that Warner Brothers saw the success of Christopher Nolan's movies. They saw the success of Nolan's Batman movies, and I think I can just picture somebody in a boardroom saying, "Well, all of our movies need to be dark. Dark sells. That's what sells." Except that's not what sells Superman. It never has been. And it, there were people I know who liked Man. The one thing they liked in Man of Steel is that it actually portrayed Superman showing all the power that he has at his disposal. But at the same time, that's what's been mocked about the film or derided about it, is that the whole battle with General Zod that ends up the last part of the film literally probably killed millions of people in Metropolis as they're knocking building after building down. And that's not Superman. Superman wouldn't carelessly do that. So they went into Batman versus Superman with a dark Superman. And Ben Affleck, who I actually liked his performance. I thought he really nailed an older Batman that's clearly an inspiration from the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel by Frank Miller, which is considered a classic in the comic book genre. He really nailed that just tired and weary and beaten down older Batman still fighting the fight. And I thought Affleck's performance was one of the best things about the movie. The problem, though, is that, Batman also murders a whole bunch of people, accidentally or on purpose, or does it really matter? Which again is not the character. Batman doesn't kill, and comic book people know this. So you just had a lot of dark characters, and then Wonder Woman was kind of forced into it. And in some ways, she was some of the better parts of the movie, even though it was like they were rushing to get to Justice League. Jesse Eisenberg, who played Lex Luthor, played a Luthor that just, was more. It was like he was playing Luthor playing the Joker, because his performance didn't really fit the character. There was the whole CGI Doomsday. It was just all these plot points and a plot that didn't make sense in a lot of areas. A lot of things about the plot that just seemed to be forced to move from one set piece to another. You didn't miss anything, I guess, is what I'm trying to tell you if you didn't see the film. You missed the spectacle. You missed the Warner Brothers spending a lot of money, basically. I don't know. I'm looking at an upcoming release schedule. You have Shazam, which is based on the Fawcett character of Captain Marvel, not to be confused with the Marvel Universe Captain Marvel, which will be coming out here shortly in a couple months as the next big Marvel movie piece. The Shazam movie is going to looks like a comedy, and I'm not really sure how that's going to translate or work. They have a Joker movie that's supposed to be like an origin story with Joaquin Phoenix in the lead, and I seem to have read somewheres that I don't know if that's going to be directly connected to what they're doing here. They have a Wonder Woman sequel that's supposed to release in 2020. And then you see a bunch of untitled films. So Henry Cavill is not going to be reprising Superman. Apparently, he's out of whatever contract he was in, or they're not extending it. Affleck apparently is not going to be doing Batman again, or that's the word. So DC's whole universe is kind of a mess right now.
I'm not sure Affleck would fit in the Batman costume these days. He looks like he ate Ben Affleck.
He ate Ben Affleck? I haven't seen him.
He looks huge.
He looks huge. Well, yes. Batman.
And I don't mean like huge in like he's been working out kind of way. He looks like huge as in, late night trips to Taco Bell kind of way.
Well, that's not exactly the Batman that what was the line at the end of The Dark Knight? It was the he's not the hero something about he's not the hero the city needs, but he's the hero the city deserves, or whatever it is. Is that what you're saying? Kind of about Affleck? He's not the Batman we need, but he's the Batman that we could end up getting if no one else is willing to step into the role. Fat Batman.
Is there a fat superhero?
There actually is. Your superhero trivia. The Legion of Superheroes, which you've probably never heard of, since I'm the comic book guy. Have you ever heard of the Legion of Superheroes?
I have not.
Okay, Legion of Superheroes is set in I believe it's the 30th century. It's futuristic heroes in a futuristic time on planet Earth, and it's basically the Earth is part of a whole united planets. All these planets are together, and it's one like universe government type of thing. And the Legion is set up sort of as a police force. It's a superhero group, and they have members from all around the galaxy. And one of them is actually called Bouncing Boy. And his ability is that he can bounce. That sounds really about as imposing, I'm guessing, as I'm making it sound, right? Yeah, his ability is he can inflate like a giant ball and bounce around. Ask me how he got his superpowers.
By eating a lot.
No, he drank a super plastic formula he thought was a soda. I'm not making that up. That is the actual origin of Bouncing Boy. So he's a rotund superhero. Though superhero I might be putting in air quotes, because he has always been kind of a I don't want to say a joke character, but he definitely is used for humor. He's not a dark character, though the suits at Warner Brothers would probably have him turned into some brooding, angry, violent killing machine as he bounces on people like a super ball. That could work. That could work with $100 million budget, right? I'm sure that's could be a good release, or not. It's not quite Fat Batman, but it would be the next best thing, I guess. So, but yeah, Aquaman. I guess that's something I'm going to have to check out. I see most of these movies in the theaters. I never did see Justice League. I was turned off so much by the reviews. I just never did see it. I guess I will have to, and see if it's as bad as people have talked about. Obviously, I'll be going to see probably Captain Marvel when it comes out. That'll be something we'll be talking about in the future. And Infinity War, Infinity Endgame, or I'm sorry, Avengers Endgame will be coming out. And that will be the end of this phase of the Marvel cinematic universe before they move on to their next phase. And I'm sure we'll be talking about that when the time comes close.
I guess their next phase is phasing out Netflix, and when they launch their Disney Plus network.
Well, that just means I'm going to have one more service I'm going to have to subscribe to. They canceled all, despite the successes of the Netflix shows, they canceled them all simply because they're going to be relaunching these type of characters or shows under their own banner, which you can't fault Disney for it. I mean, it's
well, they paid a lot of money for it.
They did, but it's going to be interesting to see how the Marvel movies move forward after Avengers Endgame, and to see if they can continue to maintain the success once these main actors and the people involved with it. Downey's contract is up. Chris Evans is obviously, his is up. Hemsworth said that I believe his contract is up, but he had so much fun filming Thor Ragnarok that he's talked about being willing to continue to do Thor movies. There's another Guardians movie that's in the works, though it won't be with James Gunn due to his recent entanglements that got him booted off of all future projects. So we'll see how that goes. They're putting a lot of eggs in the Captain Marvel basket. We'll see how that ends up going. There'll be a sequel to Black Panther. There's going to be another Spider-Man movie, though eventually Sony may end up, they have that working relationship with Sony. So whether or not that continues, if Sony was smart, they would let it continue, since Marvel understands the characters and makes good movies, and Sony tends to not to. Venom, did you end up seeing the Venom movie? That was also a big. See, I haven't seen that. It did well at the box office, very well at the box office. I didn't hear that it was terrible. I heard it was what it was. It was a good popcorn flick type of film, but I don't think it really convinced me that Sony knows how to do anything better than they did when they were following up the Spider-Man franchise before Marvel got their hands back into it. And of course, the Fox and Disney had their merger that should be going through officially relatively soon, if I'm not mistaken. And that's going to fold all the Fox properties into Disney. So Marvel will have other failed franchises and other successful franchises moving over to them. So for anyone who's not familiar with that, that's the X-Men franchises, Wolverine, Deadpool. Deadpool, which I know you liked, was a movie we both enjoyed tremendously. That is now going to be part of the Marvel universe cinematically. They'll have the rights to it. And failed franchises like the Fantastic Four, which, again, hopefully Marvel can get that property on track, because that's a classic Marvel property, and it has just been absolutely trashed in Fox's three attempts to make Fantastic Four movies. The two that starred Jessica Alba and Chris Evans, ironically, and Michael Chilkus, and I can't remember who it was who played Mr. Fantastic. That's sad. I remember the other three, but can't remember. And then there was the rebooted one, which got horrific reviews and bombed and isn't going anywhere. And three movies best known for me to having butchered Doctor Doom, who's a classic Marvel character. So as a comic fan, very sad when those movies all came out. But now Marvel gets their crack at them. So yeah, if you have Marvel movie fatigue, for anyone who's listening, you're going to continue to have it, because there's no sign that, they've taken what would be, and we talked about Aquaman being a B-list or C-list character in the DC universe. Well, the Guardians of the Galaxy were literally a C-list or D-list type of property for Marvel. Iron Man was never an A-list. He was kind of like the B-list for Marvel. They made a Black Panther, who, that was a tremendously reviewed movie and made a ridiculous amount of money, right? And you saw, and you did see Black Panther and enjoyed it, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
But there's another character that never could hold his own title, was always kind of like a supporting character. And yet Marvel turned that into cinematic, like they're printing money. The Ant-Man movies made money, and Ant-Man's another guy. It's like, again, it's another second tier character. This isn't even Marvel's heavy hitting characters, and Marvel Studios and now Disney, like I said, it's like a money making machine for them. They just can't. We keep waiting for their first bust to come along, and it just hasn't happened. And eventually something will. But I mean, as a fan of these movies, I'd like to see them continue to all be successful.
And that does it for our second episode. I'd like to thank you for listening. And if you like what you heard, please recommend us to a friend. We'll be joining you again in a couple of days with another exciting podcast of Excruciating Minutiae.